What's up, Flock? A little late night post game stream for you. It is 9:08 Eastern on Sunday, September 15th. All AFC North games have been played today, and Sunday Night Football is going on right now in Houston between the Bears and Texans. So I figured I could hop on here. We could talk a little bit about the division, talk a little bit about what the title says, and that is there's a disturbing trend that's not just holding the Ravens back right now, but that perhaps has been holding the Baltimore Ravens back under John Harbaugh in recent years. So we're going to get into that and a whole lot more coming up in this episode. It is brought to you by my friends at Primary Residential Mortgage. A reminder that coming up next week for the Dallas game, which is a road contest down at Jerry's World, I will be doing an in-person pregame live stream from 1 to 3 o'clock at Michael's Cafe in Timonium, Maryland, and it is free to join. It's free to pop in. I would love to see you there. I'll give you more information about it coming up later on in the stream. But some opening thoughts, as you saw on Twitter, you can always find me at Bobby Baltimore, were these. And I kind of wanted to pick apart each observation. First and foremost, needless to say, that is as poor of a regular season loss as you will ever see in the John Harbaugh era. That's not to say that there haven't been worse or there haven't been, again, equally disappointing losses, because there certainly have been, and you can rip off a few that come to mind. Maybe even last year against Gardner Minshew's Indianapolis Colts, where on a rainy day in Baltimore, he stole one. Then he stole one today. But maybe, just maybe, as Derrick Henry said after the game, actually, Vegas was the better team. That's why they won. That's what Derrick Henry, your star running back, had to say post-game to reporters. So to begin, the mind-boggling decisions when it comes to throwing the challenge flags, I think is probably a good place to start, because the way I view this is that operationally, there have been flaws within this organization when it comes to the decision-making process, the streamlined communication process that goes into the decision-making on any given play that will or will not be challenged. And that, to me, has been a flaw over the years. They have not been good enough at it. It hasn't been communicative enough. It hasn't been effective or efficient enough. And today, you saw two plays that John Harbaugh lost out on, meaning he lost two timeouts, one in the first half, one in the second half, that came back to bite him in terms of clock management, in terms of valuing something that's supposed to be an asset, that's supposed to be something that can help influence the outcome of games. And when asked about it afterwards, he didn't necessarily give you an answer that was satisfying. He said he does call upstairs to see what they saw before challenging, but it was going fast as the Raiders rushed to the line of scrimmage to try and get a playoff. Quote, "It's not like you have all day and you don't have much of a look. Just the high leverage of it, I just felt like, and it was on me, I just felt like I'm going to take a shot here and see if we'll win this one, because it was a big chunk play. You're not going to be undefeated on challenges over the course of the season. I don't think that's the difference in the game. Would have been nice to have a timeout, but you have to take a shot sometimes too." In other words, he really didn't take accountability for it whatsoever, and he doesn't think it's the difference in the game. Well, we have no way of proving whether or not it's the difference, but it certainly impacted the ultimate outcome of the game. I think we can all agree there. And so I think a lot of you see John Harbaugh in this kind of light post game, and you're just sort of sick and tired of being sick and tired when it comes to the messaging, when it comes to looking at it at a way where he didn't necessarily place the blame on himself. As the head coach, that's what you're supposed to do. He has in the past. He didn't in that case right there. And I, for one, was really surprised. It's part of a bigger picture before I get back to that opening slide that I think is really, really disturbing under Harbs. This is a list that has the teams that have suffered the most losses with a the most losses with a 7+ point lead in the fourth quarter play over the last 4 seasons. The Ravens are atop this list. They lead it with 10 losses with a 7+ point lead in the fourth quarter over the last 4 years. The next closest team, Chicago, with 6, Colts, Seahawks, Titans, all with 5 apiece. This is not a list you want to be on, much less lead. This is concerning, and to me, this is a stain on John Harbaugh's resume. This is a trend. This is not just something that's a fluke. This has been a trend throughout the last several years. And there have been a multitude of course, factors that have gone into these losses. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you when you're the head coach. That's how it goes. And so to me, when I look at this over the last several years, it's hard not to think that at this point, there's got to be something that changes, right? That is a statistic that to me is undeniably something that you have to consider. Undeniably something that can't just be swept under the rug. That is an organizational flaw. And it starts with the head coach. Back to some early thoughts from that opening slide. This experiment that is Daniel Fa'alele, how can you be mad at him? At this point, it's the coaching. Why is he out there? He is a developmental tackle, meaning a tackle who is being converted to a guard. And he's being asked to not only start the year as your starter right guard. Excuse me, it's getting late and I've been traveling and officiating a wedding. It's coming back to me. Not only is he being asked to be your starting right guard for the first time in his NFL career, but the guy is being asked to go up against the likes of Chris Jones in week 1, Max Crosby in week 2, Micah Parsons in week 3. You've got Buffalo week 4, Cincinnati week 5. This could start to snowball really, really quickly if the Ravens don't get it together. And when asked specifically about the offensive line, here's what John Harbaugh had to say. Quote, I'm just going to look to keep coaching the guys and keep getting better with the guys. I'll look at the tape and we'll see. We're always going to play the best players. That's always a part of it, if that's what your question is. We'll always do that. Well, what I would love to know is, why don't you have your serviceable, experienced, more veteran right guard playing for you in Ben Cleveland? What has happened? Is it practice habits? Is it an internal thing? Is it a head coach relationship with his player? What is it? Because having Daniel in there, newly minted, it's causing, it's wreaking havoc. And it was one of the differences in today, particularly down the stretch, around that 2 or 3 minute window in the fourth quarter, when Max Crosby comes in like a bat out of hell, and Daniel just never stood a chance. It's been tough to watch. And again, I'm not faulting the player here. It's hard to put the player at fault. Your fault, the fault, the organization is at fault for continuing this experiment. You know, Eric DeCosta kind of tipped us off to this a couple weeks ago. We should have taken him at his word. What did he say? He said on the Friday prior to the season, that impromptu press conference, he said to reporters, there will be hiccups along the way. And in a year from now, I expect this offensive line to be up and running. In a year from now, at the time we were all kind of like, well, wait a second, in a year from now. But then they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe he's just talking about to get it back to what it once was, and that he believes it's going to be serviceable this upcoming season. Those words are aging like fine wine, and oh my, the foreshadowing is quite something. The Ravens have an issue on the right-hand side of their line. The good news is, with this rebuild that they've been under, it's been a big undertaking, right? Their decision, their organizational decision collectively to rebuild and retool the offensive line with youth has been a big, big undertaking. And to be honest with you, 2 of the 3 key pieces to the rebuild are actually doing pretty darn well. Andrew Voorhees seems to be fitting in nicely at left guard. And it sure looks like, after you saw what I saw today from Roger Rosengarten, even though he was still working in a rotation type of system with Patrick McCary, he held his own in a few reps with Max Crosby. especially given that one that led to the Lamar extension of a play and found Zay Flowers. He was one-on-one, mano-a-mano on an island with Max Crosby, one of the game's great pass rushers today, and he held his own. I was proud of Roger. That was clever. That was crafty. I loved his lateral quickness. He's fierce with his hands. I was impressed there with Roger. And so if he continues to build on that, really all you're looking at is Fa'alele. Right, he's just too slow. He's too big. He can't be dealing with all these guys coming up. And so with all that in mind, it's actually you want to look at it as a success story in the sense that it's such a big undertaking in terms of what they're trying to do right now, in terms of what it was last year and what they lost and what walked out the door. But yet, as much as it has been a success, it's such a glaring hole right now at right guard that doesn't feel like a success. And what I mean by success is, you have your mainstay in Tyler Linderbaum. He's your Pro Bowl center. And you have somebody in Ronnie Stanley who's healthy and who looks good. And you have somebody who's you feel like is your future starter for the foreseeable future in Andrew Voorhees coming off his redshirt season. And you feel like you have a Roger Rosengarten who, yeah, you're not ready to get his feet wet yet in terms of like full starts and full game performances in terms of workload, but you feel really good about him and he's showing flashes that he can be your right tackle and perhaps even left tackle of the future. But at right guard, there are more questions than answers, and that is not a world that you want to live in when you're competing for Super Bowl championships and trying to keep your QB1 healthy. That is not a world that I want to live in. This is the statistic that I just keep coming back to. It is shocking. It is jarring to see. The Ravens have the most losses with at least a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter over the last 4 seasons with 10. 10. One other observation, and that is what was most obvious. The inability to stop a one-dimensional offense that finished today's game with 27 rushing yards. 27. Devontae Adams is one of the game's greats at his position. A future Hall of Famer, a technician, a true bona fide number one. But they are so one-dimensional it hurts. They refused to run the ball. 27 yards on 17 carries. Are you serious? With a non-mobile quarterback who's now beat you twice at your place with 2 different organizations over the last 2 years within the last calendar year. That is inexcusable. It's unacceptable. And while there were a lot of things to like about the defense, when it mattered the most, they could not get the stops that they needed. And that was highly, highly disappointing to see. The Ravens should have finished this game. They had a 10-point lead, which we'll get to in just a second in the fourth quarter. But they didn't. And that inability to finish, it has plagued this team throughout the last several years in what's been a disappointing decade since the Super Bowl in this John Harbaugh era. Before we continue the conversation, and I'm glad you're here with me on this late Sunday evening, Sunday Night Football currently underway right now in Houston. The Texans are up 13-3 on Chicago. Coming up next week, Primary Residential Mortgage and I are thrilled to be hosting an afternoon at Michael's Cafe in Timonium, Maryland. That is Sunday, September 22nd. And my pregame show is going to be live and in person from Michael's from 1 to 3:30. Would love to hang out with you guys. You can register by clicking on the link that I have included in the show notes below. It is free. Cowboys and Ravens kicks off at 4:25. There's going to be raffles and plenty of fun to have throughout the day leading up to the game. So I would love to see you guys there. Support me, support my brand, support Michael's Cafe, and I'll catch up with you on Sunday from 1 to 3:30. Again, all home games, of course, will be at the Be More Around Town tailgate this upcoming season. And the first one, of course, got underway today. How about this from Derrick Henry postgame? Quote, "They were the better team. That's why they won." Oh, my God. How sad is that? That is sad, but it's true. Not on paper, they weren't, but they made enough plays to ultimately win this game. And you can talk about how it was self-inflicted errors all you want. If your star running back saying that, I'm going to take him at face value. There's a couple sequences that I think about that really turned the nature of this game. And one that comes to mind is the Rashad Bateman miscue that led to a Lamar Jackson interception. You know, a lot of stats need context. Turnovers in general always need context. Lamar's first interception of the season needs context. At the end of the year, you're going to see whatever that number is in terms of the amount of interceptions. And to me, interceptions should be shared with wide receivers. We should have online wide receiver statistical areas that have the interceptions that they were a part of, meaning that they caused. And in Rashad's case, he caused a Lamar Jackson interception with just a brutal, brutal rep. Something he had to have. You have to have this. You just have to. It was 100% on Rashad. Hit him right in the numbers, right in the breadbasket, Lamar did. He bobbles it, allowing the Raiders to intercept him. Robert Spillane, who had a game-wrecking performance today for Vegas. And that sort of shifted the momentum that the Ravens would never truly recover from. The fact that they were in a position to basically not only finish, but run it down their throats, milk the clock, and get out of here 1-1 and missed out on that opportunity. Let's pick it up with 12:18 left in the fourth quarter. Ravens are driving. Bully ball is in full effect. It's 16-13. They have a field goal lead, did Baltimore. And they go trickery. Derrick Henry goes direct snap. Lamar is on the outside, top of your screen as a wide receiver. Nelson Aguilar on the bottom. Somebody's chipping on the right. I just can't tell who it is. Maybe Kohler, Andrews, can't tell. Everybody in the world knows where this is going. And yet Vegas couldn't do shit about it. And led by Ricard, led by the big body offensive lineman, the Ravens refused to be denied, and Derrick Henry crossed the plane for 6. They were up 10 points with 12 minutes to go in the fourth, and they didn't win the game. That is brutal. It's inexcusable. That's what it is. The offense started slow, struggled to finish drives. And following this run, by the way, they went 3 and out on consecutive possessions. And that opened the door for Vegas. Gardner Minshew is scrappy. He is a nitty-gritty player who's not going to wow you, isn't flashy, but he is one of the most serviceable backups, even though he's a starter this year. O'Connell's playing behind him. He won the job. But Gardner Minshew is a proven veteran in this league. I don't expect Vegas to be a playoff team, which makes this even more disappointing. But what I do expect is for Minshew to be a game manager. And somehow he managed this game down the stretch with his number one future Hall of Famer in Davante Adams. And the Ravens had no answers. It's terrible. There's just no way around it. It's a brutal, brutal loss. And perhaps even just as brutal is another disturbing trend that's becoming somewhat of a thing. And that's Justin Tucker. What was once gimme, or what was once a given, has become uncertain. JT9 is now 1 for 7 after today's miss from 56 from field goals, 50 plus over the last 2 seasons. And as I tweeted, that's pretty shocking. And it is becoming somewhat of a trend. One for 7 is a trend. Now, Justin was busy today, and he did hit a couple. How many did he have? He was 3 for 4. along a 48. So by no means am I pressing the panic button when it comes to Justin, but this is just something that can't just be swept underneath the rug. That's a legitimate fact that Justin's going through a little bit of a slump. And today, it was the difference in sending this thing to overtime. What say you guys? Call into the show. I have over 200 comments to get to. I have not looked at one comment this entire time because I've just been locked in giving you some thoughts. But if you'd like to call in on this Sunday evening to give me a thought, I just dropped the link in the show in the live chat. Antonio Smith, thank you for the super chat donation. On a scale of 1 to 10, how panicked are you, Bobby? 1 to 10, how panicked am I? I'll go like a eh, I'll go like a 5. I'm like between a 4 and 5 in terms of panic level. But I tell you what, it's not getting any easier. And I guess that's what's maybe leading to a sense of urgency here internally as I think about this. You've got Dallas on the road next week. Now, they got thumped and, quite frankly, embarrassed by New Orleans today. But that's a road game for the Ravens. Dallas is streaky. Cowboys are going to be pissed off and flat out embarrassed coming off that loss. So you've got them next week. Then you turn around and play Sunday Night Football against one of the hottest teams in football in Buffalo. And then Cincinnati, you're on the road in week 5. And so we've all seen and known, we've all understood how top-heavy and challenging the opening month plus is for the Ravens. And they're playing a first-place schedule, which is why I predicted they were going to have 6 losses. I had them at 11 and 6. It's a week-to-week league, but it's going to be a week-to-week nightmare for the Ravens if they keep this up because it ain't getting any easier. Good question, Antonio. Where are you guys at for those of you in the live chat? Daniel, if you can turn that camera on, I'll have you into the show here in just a second. If you guys want to pop on and spend some time with me here this Sunday evening, you can. Travis says it's a 7 for him. I had some other slides about officiating. I know there's been some conversation about the officiating and particularly the Brandon Stevens defensive pass interference, the DPI call on Davante Adams. Gene Steratore did not have a chance to talk about that on the CBS Live broadcast, but Tiki Barber said that they're always going to make those calls. Well, Gene tweeted out the following. I believe both the wide receiver and defensive back, meaning Davante and B. Steve, were hand fighting while the ball was in the air and broke contact around the same time. I didn't see either one gaining an advantage, so not in favor of the defensive pass interference call. That from Gene Steratore on what became a pretty significant call, very significant call. There was a lot of mutual hand fighting. That was sort of my observation on it. And unfortunately for Brandon Stevens, ended up being a pretty significant knock against him. Davante was nothing short of dominant. He had Brandon's number much throughout the afternoon. He finished with a game-high 9 receptions for 110 yards receiving. He did score that touchdown. He was targeted 12 times and had a long of 30. Future Hall of Famer in Davante Adams, whose prime years, by the way, are totally being wasted in Vegas, which is a conversation for another time, but that's always a bummer to me. Let's open up the guest lines. We'll take this conversation in a number of different directions. The link to join the show is included in the live chat, which is what I just dropped in there. We'll go to Julian first. Great to see you, brother. How are you?
Oh, Bobby, good Lord, man.
Brother.
I mean, I got two hats on the ground right now: the Ravens hat and the Orioles hat. Throw them on the ground because I'm like, okay, both of these teams pissed me off today. So
Yeah.
I was simulcastly watching the Orioles game. Then I'm at the Ravens game too. I went to the Ravens game too, so I was doing both at the same time. I'm like, okay, the Orioles are doing good. And then they got up 2 runs. I think it was the Tigers. They got up 2 runs on them. Then the Orioles
Yeah.
came back. Then they gave up the lead again. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go again. And then they lost. So all right, forget the Orioles, Ravens now. It was a comfortable lead with the Ravens, and then fourth quarter came, and then the mistakes happened, and the penalties, and Max Crosby killing us, and I'm like, okay, is it going to be one of those games again? And then I was surely right because I was with my aunt. She was right next to me, and she was like, "Jillian, I don't know. Maybe it's you because because I went to an Orioles game earlier and they lost, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's me, but I'm like, I'm not going to go that route. So I guess going towards the fourth quarter after they got the ball back at the the Vegas Raiders. I can't call them that. I don't know. It's hard for me to call them that. But the
Oakland,
Raiders,
yeah.
it's hard for me to call them that because it's too long to say. I'm so used to calling them Oakland. But the Raiders, when they got the ball back, after we failed, I just was like, okay, maybe we could pin them down, and then they shanked the punt, and I'm like, oh god, and
Well, I'm
then the
glad you brought
penalty,
that up, Julian, and not to
yeah.
interrupt, but that
Mm.
24-yard punt that was then ended up becoming 19 because of Kadar Hallman's penalty, that was a significant play. And Jordan
Huge.
Stout is it's consistently
Mhm.
has been consistent when it comes to his ability to flip fields and put the
Mhm.
Ravens defense in good position, but that was just brutal. So not only do you go 3 and out, not
Mhm.
only do you put Vegas in an opportunity to start at your at 43, I think it was, but
Mhm.
now you're backpedaling and the
Mhm.
momentum is shifting. And I think that play from Stout and the interception that was
Mhm.
caused by Rashad's miscue, those are
Mhm.
two back-breaking plays. We can talk about the officiating all we want. Let's talk about the stuff that's in control of that this team is in control of. Those two
Mhm.
things right there from Stout and Bateman,
Mhm.
that those are controllable items.
Mhm.
Officiating is not. And so while we can harp on that all we want,
Mhm.
I always like to focus in on what are the areas that are self-inflicted,
Right.
and those are two second half gouges that ultimately helped decide this one.
Absolutely, I agree. And it's like I'm looking at this team and I'm like, okay, we're going into year after year after year. I'm looking at Harbaugh. I'm looking at like, what are we doing exactly? What is this? Where's the focus of this team going forward? Because I've been hearing and seeing and watching Harbaugh preach the same song and dance for like so long, and it just you get so tired of it, man. I mean, I get it. I don't want to like question it, but it's like
Oh,
I'm at that
it needs to
point
be
where
questioned. Yeah.
I'm at that point where he needs to be questioned entirely because I keep hearing the same song, and it's like stop insulting our intelligence, Harbaugh. Please stop doing that because we can see right through the crack, man. We can see what's going on. We're not stupid. We know what's going on with this team. We see every other team can figure out Kansas City or Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati's struggling, they can find a way to score points. All the other great teams, the Saints, they put up 40 on the Cowboys today.
They look good
I'm
as
just
hell.
like, I'm looking at it. I'm like, why can't we be that consistent? Why can't we just get over the hump? Why can't we be? Because I know how talented this team can be if everything clicks. We saw it last year, championship game, mind-boggling. But it's like, okay, the carryover. Why can't we be more consistent?
Hey, I'm gonna
It
cut you
don't
off
make
there
it.
just because. Yeah, I got to cut you off just because.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all. That's all I wanted to say, man.
we,
I know you got to get other people in. I
yeah,
get it. I
I'm gonna
just
get
wanted to
some
say
other
it.
heads in here, but we could do it all night. It's good to see you. It's good to see you again, Julian, and let's do it again soon. All right.
All right, I got you, man. See you
All
next
right.
time.
See you. Yep. Hang in there. Everybody hang in there, Daniel. We're coming to you. Indeed, you next. The guest lines are buzzing right now. There's a link to join in the show notes below. Not in the show notes, in the live chat if you'd like to as well. Daniel, what you got for me tonight?
Hey, what's going on, Bobby?
How are you?
Man, these Ravens, man, they are stressing me out, brother.
It's funny how this works too, right? Because as soon as it's over, CBS immediately shifts to the game of the day. And
hmm
it's, of course, it's Chiefs Bengals. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, Ravens don't even belong in the fucking same field as them right now. Excuse my
No,
French. Like,
no.
like coming off that game, and you're thinking to yourself, like, yeah, they almost came out of the AFC a year ago, but it's a very different team.
hmm
And while it's early and all that, as I mentioned earlier on, it is very, very careful here because this thing could start to snowball if they're not careful.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just like so draining. We're seeing the exact same thing every single year, and there's like no changes. Like Harbaugh's just giving us the same excuses. Like Zach, I don't know what's going on with the defense. I feel like Zach Orr is just playing zone all day. He's not blitzing or anything. Like it's so frustrating, man.
Well, Zach
Literally
is
just frustrating.
Zach is easing in, right? I have a hard time pointing the blame at him in terms of like being a culprit. He's a part of it, obviously. He's getting his feet from underneath him. And it's definitely been a conservative game plan, particularly in Kansas City. You have to be careful, obviously, when you deploy blitz packages against Mahomes, or else he'll crush you.
Yeah.
But there's been some substitution stuff. There's been some operational stuff that's got to get cleaned up. But for the most part, I don't even view him in like my top 5 of heavy concerns right now. You
Yeah.
know, like he's outside my top 5.
But
So
you don't like see this is what the only thing that I would say about that is I just don't like the way Kyle Hamilton is being used. Like you don't even like I don't think he should be back there. Like I think he needs to be up front, dismantling things, running around. That's what he's good at, and I just feel like he's just being misused.
I
Like at
thought
that
I
point.
saw I thought I saw a tweet from Jeff today about Kyle. Let me see if I did. Let's see. I thought that he was laboring out there. He said something along the lines that I thought I saw something that he was favoring a shoulder, but I might be. Well, anyway, we'll see if Kyle's healthy. But I appreciate you for calling in, dude. Hang in there, all right?
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Of course. Adit, welcome in. The guest lines are open. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Good, how are you? Yeah, I just want to make a few quick notes there. Honestly, I know you and Sarah were talking about starting Rosegarten more. I actually
Yeah.
do think that if they do start, if they do want to move him more, I think you got to start next week because obviously you got divisional games. You have more. You have some of these other like the Bills, all the other games coming up. So that's the first thing. Like you want to get him more reps, and I think that's the thing. Voorhees, good. Linderbaum, good. Uh, Stanley, good. I don't know why you have like a 6'8", 380 pound lineman play right guard. It seems like he's better off. He should be playing tackle. I remember, I think it was the Bills a couple years ago. Was it the Bills or where Daniel Falele was like good at left tackle? But it seems like he's a better tackle. The other thing is there was a going back to clock management. There was someone that the Ravens employed, Daniel Stern. He was like this analytics guy, but he was in 2019. He was like very specific, helping Harbaugh, helping Roman with some of the clock management.
I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually interesting because it seems like, and good for him, it seems like he's kind of moving up the ranks.
Well, is he still with the organization?
Yeah. I think he's like the like director of football research, assistant quarterbacks coach or something. But
Really?
the reason I bring up that point is it seems like in 2019 everything was working really well, and that's when he was that's when he had when he had a more direct involvement. And while he has been promoted and he is doing more in responsibility, it does seem like either the people who are now doing his job aren't as good as what he was doing, and that may have been the reason why some of these calls, some of these challenges, someone like going for it on fourth down, when to go for two, it's kind of been lacking the last couple of years. So that was just a common thing because I remember that being a big thing in 2019 and it was working, but now it's not working as much. So I was just curious. I was just curious last couple of days, like was he still in the organization and is he still doing that? So that was just a thought I had.
That's really interesting. He is now, to your point, the director of football strategy and the assistant quarterbacks coach. So he is assisting T. Martin in that room. So who once was sort of your Yale nerd type guy, right? Like
Like
you
a Sig
said,
Meidel, like he was like a Sig Meidel type, like if for the Orioles comparison.
and he'd
Like
be
he was,
funneling information. He'd be on a headset. He'd be up next to Greg, right? We saw a lot of him when Greg Roman was up there. He'd be on that second ledge up in the booth up there high atop the stadium. So, wow, okay, so maybe that is a staffing change that hasn't made the operation as streamlined as it should be, because it's in recent years it's not been robust. It's just not been effective, and it seems as if it comes across as if it's organized chaos, but the organizational part of it has not been effective enough. So, interesting point you bring up.
Maybe there's people from maybe Sig can advise the Ravens on some people, like just from someone from his side that can help him.
Yeah, well, good stuff, brother. Great to see you again, and hope to do it again.
Yep.
All right, guest line is open, and we got a lot to discuss tonight, of course, because there is, of course, as you see in the headline, there is somewhat of a disturbing trend that's been forming and that is currently in the midst of giving the Ravens fits here in the early part of this 2024 season, and that is the fact that they are atop a list you do not want to be on. They have suffered the most losses with a 7+ point lead in the fourth quarter over the last 4 seasons. 10 of them. 10 of them to be exact. Chicago at 6, Indy, Seattle, and Tennessee, each with 5 apiece. Speaking of Seattle, Mike McDonald off to a blazing start. Congratulations to him and the Seattle Seahawks. They beat the New England Patriots today in overtime, 23-20. So Mike Mack and his era with the Seahawks off to a good start. As for the rest of the AFC North, here's the way the division looks after 2 weeks of this season. Oh, if this has any indication of where things are headed, it's going to be something. Cincy and Baltimore, 0-2. Pittsburgh leads the way at 2-0. And Cleveland, having won its first game today against Jacksonville, 1-1 in second place. So the specific games, though, themselves, let's take a look at Browns-Jaguars from a box score standpoint. A very average game from Deshaun Watson. He goes 22 of 34 with 186 yards passing. No picks, no touchdowns. He was sacked twice and a quarterback rating of 78.8. Jerry Jeudy was his top wide receiver with five receptions and 73 yards. Cleveland bounces back 1-1 after getting thumped by Dallas in week 1. What about the instant class? I mean, every time Cincy and Kansas City play, you better believe it's going to be a good one, and today was no exception. Kansas City wins on a game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker as time expired, 26-25. They are now 2-0, are the back-to-back reigning champs. Cincy 0-2, like I mentioned. Joe Burrow was 23 of 36 for 258 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He was sacked 3 times for a quarterback rating of 103.7. So Joe looks healthy, at least for the time being. I believe I saw something on that Isaiah Pacheco left the game in a boot. Did I see that? Again, on Sundays, when everything's dedicated to the Ravens, you only see so much. But let's take a quick look at what's up with Pacheco. Oh, yeah, I got the replay right here. He got pretzeled pretty good here. Tackled real awkwardly. Looks like it's a right ankle or MCL or something along those lines. So Jeff Darlington caught him leaving the stadium on crutches and a walking boot. So he is their downhill, fierce runner, tone setter, Isaiah Pacheco. Looks like he could be missing some time depending on how he comes out tonight. And then as far as the Pittsburgh Steelers are concerned, just like we all had it drawn up, right? The Steelers, after 2 weeks atop the division, 2-0. Doesn't get more classic than this division. You know it's going to change a bunch of different times, too. They go on the road and beat the Denver Broncos 13-6. Another modest outing from Justin Fields, but guess what? He managed the game, and Pittsburgh walks away as winners. Justin was 13 of 20 for 117 yards. He threw 1 touchdown. He was sacked twice, quarterback rating of 97.3. Najee Harris, 17 carries for 69 yards. Pat Freiermuth, led the way at tight end with a team high, again, very modest day from the Steelers passing attack. Freiermuth had 4 for 39. Pickens had 2 for 29. Somehow, some way, Mike Tomlin does it again, at least to start off the year. Former Raven Deshaun Elliott led the way defensively for Pittsburgh. 9 tackles, 4 of which were solo. He had a tackle for loss in there. Let's see PQ's numbers. PQ had 4 tackles, 3 of which were solo, and a pass deflection for Roquan's former running mate. So that is that. David, if you have your camera on, I'm happy to get a call in here since you've been waiting in the waiting room. Appreciate you guys for being here. I'll quickly show you what I have going on over at Instagram. I'm going to be putting up Instagram Reels with my thoughts in condensed form so that I can start to kind of populate content in other areas outside of just the YouTube space. And here was tonight's. You can follow me at Bobby Baltimore. Here's where this was tonight's thoughts. Matt, coming off that Ravens loss to the Raiders. That is as poor of a loss as you will ever see in the John Harbaugh era. You had mind-boggling decisions made when it comes to throwing the challenge flag, literally with almost no regard for the value of having timeouts when it matters in crunch time. They have an issue at right guard. Daniel Fa'alele is a developmental player. There's a reason why the label experiment was thrown onto him over the summer. These games are too important to be experimenting at that position on the right-hand side of the line. And then this is actually probably most mind-boggling. When you needed a stop, right? And we all saw how one-dimensional this Vegas team was and is. They finished with 27 rushing yards. And yet when it mattered, the defense couldn't get it done. And Devontae Adams and Gardner Minshew beat you at your home turf. Season opener, home opener, inside the bank. It's a crushing loss, but it's a disappointing one because there's a disturbing trend that I saw a statistic on, and I'm going to share it with you. The most losses with a 7+ point lead in the fourth quarter over the last 4 seasons, you know who leads that list? The Ravens with 10 of them. The next closest team is Chicago with 6. That is not a good list to be on. And honestly, when you have to point the finger and assess blame, it's hard not to begin that conversation with the head coach. Something's got to change. All right, so here's where I'm at coming off. That's what's going on in the Instagram world. Would love for you to connect with me there on both Twitter and Instagram at Bobby Baltimore. I am also back up on Facebook after having my account deactivated. I got it to 50,000 followers, and in December it deactivated. So would love for you to connect with me at all those different areas as well. You can also join the Bobby Baltimore Patreon community. And I'd like to shout out and thank a couple of my OG patrons who have been supporting me through there for a minute now and do so this month. Shrew Hashmi and Rich S. Thank you both for believing in what I'm building. This is your monthly shout out. Appreciate you both. And if you guys are interested in doing the same, you can visit patreon.com/Bobby Trosset or just visit the show notes below to learn more about how to get involved there. I appreciate you guys. Over 1,100 of you concurrently joining me right now. We do have a special guest that's set to join the show tomorrow. We got to finalize some things in order to get that done, but it is a current Raven. And Sarah and I will be live, of course, at 12 noon Eastern, as always. What a crazy couple months it's been. I've been in upstate New York the entire summer. I am back in Baltimore. I did the Be More Around Town tailgate early this morning. I officiated a wedding last night in Chestertown, Maryland. Thank you to Tuxedo House for getting me right in terms of my suit rental. Scott Furman up there in the Timonium area, always takes care of me. And I really, really recommend them for weddings and other milestone stuff. So appreciate them. Appreciate all of you. It was a heck of a summer, but it's now time to get back into in-season mode. And that means obviously working through what should be a really interesting week full of conversation as the Ravens try to turn a page quickly with the Dallas Cowboys looming. Daniel Rodriguez, we had you on earlier. Appreciate you for chiming in with the super chat. Just wanted to say thanks for letting us voice our frustrations. That's what we do. And I look forward to doing more of this all throughout the year. You guys can always vent, by the way, in the Bobby Baltimore Discord server. It is free to join, and you can do so by just clicking on the link right here. Well, I'll do this. This is my 24/7 hub for conversations surrounding Baltimore sports. It's my Discord server. And I'll just throw it in the live chat. I would love to have you in there. There's over 500 folks that join and talk shop. I try to get in there and mix it up as much as possible. And of course, it's not just football either. There's a lot of baseball chatter as well. I haven't been in here in a couple of days, so it's a lot of stuff I got to get caught up on. General stuff as well. Rob's talking UFC. You get a welcome notification if you do join. So anyway, would love for you to see you guys over there. Oh, what else? Anything else? I think we're in good shape here. Ravens, not so much, but it's early and they got a little bit of work to do. There's no doubt. There's no doubt, but it is early. And the panic button, while maybe you're working your way towards it, hopefully it hasn't been pressed yet. 0-2. Your statistic from here on out, every loss you get, your percentage of potentially making the playoffs goes obviously down and down and down. So Ravens now or never. And Sunday in Dallas feels like a must win given this division. But hey, Cincinnati is 0-2 as well. Go figure. They typically do that on an annual basis. And somehow, some way, always end up being in it when it's all said and done. So you guys are the best for popping by. The super chats now are coming in. You guys are great. Appreciate you. Steven says Stanley's contract is up next year, right? So we'll be good next year. With limited cap, won't be in the same position. Only two solid linemen, Lindy and Roger. So Ronnie is not on this team contractually after this season. You're correct on that. Linderbaum, of course, will still be on the rookie deal. Roger will be on a rookie deal. Voorhees will be on a rookie deal. You have to figure out right guard. It might get to a point where it's such an issue that they have to make a pre-deadline deal. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. But yes, Ronnie, based on the pay cut, based on the restructure of this offseason, his future in Baltimore is uncertain after this year. That's correct. Well, this is an issue. Sock Dreams just got here. But we've been going for 48 minutes. Sock, where you been? Appreciate you for being here, though. All right, some of you have already pressed the panic button. Apparently, Sarah and I didn't do our job. We were supposed to walk you off the ledge today. Oh, boy, you got to love football. It's a week-to-week league. How do you think they're feeling in Dallas right now? You smack Cleveland in week 1, and then you get smacked by New Orleans in week 2. Wild. We'll see which Cowboys team shows up to Jerry's World coming up on Sunday. Appreciate you guys for joining. As always, if you'd like to donate and you don't want to go through the Super Chat feature, you can always do so through Venmo or Cash App, as you see up on the screen. Like the video if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And hit that notification bell on your way out so you can be notified of when I'm dropping my next daily content stream. Appreciate you guys, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Sarah and I will be live at 12 noon Eastern. We are so back in Baltimore. I know you got a sour taste probably. You got Sunday scaries rolling, but hey, at least it's early. Later, guys. And thank you to Primary Residential Mortgage for supporting the channel and sponsoring this specific episode.